So here we are, 2023, and credit is an important factor, and it's become something that, I think it wasn't talked about nearly as much maybe a couple decades ago, but it's definitely with a lot of advertising from Experian and some of the credit bureaus out there. There's a little bit more information. There's a little bit more knowledge that, boy, I better, pay attention to this credit thing or I'm going to, get into trouble. So when we think about the impact of what good credit and bad credit has in your life, where are some of the places that you begin or that come to mind, Ty, where, credit really can impact you here, and maybe we don't always expect some of these places. Some of them, we don't even think that credit has an effect, but it does.
Yeah, I think the very first one for me would be car insurance, right? Getting your very first insurance for your own vehicle. You're moving out, you're 18 years old, you have to go get your insurance and realize, oh my gosh, because my credit is terrible, my rate went up by $300 a month. It's, it darn near has the same impact that like a DUI can have on the cost of your insurance. And so that's the first real experience I had or saw credit have a big impact on my life, was the first time you have to go get your own car insurance.
That's huge. I mean, think of all the different ways you need insurance in this country in your life. You need, car insurance. You need home insurance. You might need rent insurance if you're renting. You need life insurance if you have children, if you have a family and you want them to be taken care of in case something happens to you. And all of those payment rates are going to be driven by your credit. And so if your credit is good, or even if it's not bad, but there just isn't a lot of it, then that's going to have a negative impact, and you're going to be paying thousands of dollars more in insurance than you would if you had good credit.
And why do you think they do that? What's the purpose of checking someone's credit for auto insurance? It's like if they don't pay, they just cancel the policy. Why do you think they want to check your credit?
I think that's exactly right. If they don't pay, then they've spent all this time and money and they put the insurance premium together. And if you have to cancel it in 3 to 6 months, they're probably operating at a loss. And so they know that, boy, if we're going to operate at a loss, we better charge more for that premium because this person might, not make their payments on time. And then all of a sudden the insurance gets canceled. We just wasted our time putting that insurance policy together versus somebody who is very dependable, somebody who pays their bills on time, has that good credit, is significantly more likely to be on top of that insurance policy. And because they're on top of it, it's going to be less costly for me. I'm less afraid of them not making the payments. And now I know my time is better spent with that person with good credit. That's my guess. I'm not in the insurance space.
I almost wonder if some of it also has to do with responsibility. Like if it's someone that takes care of their credit, they tend to be more responsible. I don't know. That's my guess. So if they're more responsible, they're less likely to get in an accident. Maybe that's one of the reasons why.
I think that's a really good point there, Ty, because insurance companies know their analytics. They know their data. They know their people really good, and they know, and that makes sense. Yeah, if you're generally a little bit more responsible with your credit, you're probably more responsible with how you take care of your car, how you take care of your home, your apartment, that you definitely want your family to be taken care of if you have a life insurance policy. And so that would make sense. If you have good credit, you're likely going to be a better insurance customer and client, and they know their data. They've been doing insurance for over 100 years, a lot of these insurance companies. So I think your assessment is probably right on.
All right. Well, that's the first impact. That would be my guess. And yeah, I think I found that a lot. I actually did insurance for a little while, very, very early on in the career, and I hated that anytime something would come back and the rate was significantly higher and you're trying to figure out why. And yeah, it's just soft credit checked, and it ruined their premium. So homes, purchasing homes, that is a huge, huge, huge eye-opener with how expensive bad credit really is.
It really is. And so, you're looking at the different options out there. Number one, let's say you have to go with FHA, which FHA is a little bit more aggressive. They can sometimes go down to a 620, 640 FICO score. Case in point, sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. But those rates are going to be significantly higher. And then there's going to be big mortgage insurance premiums a lot of the time, too, for those. And so it's a big deal. I mean, you'll see a lot of young kids now, they're in their mid-20s, late 20s, maybe early 30s, and they just didn't get a lot of education about credit, and they go to apply for that home loan, and they're shocked that, well, actually, I don't qualify. And sometimes they don't qualify just because they don't have actually any credit established, and other times it's they got in trouble with credit card debt. So I remember, years ago, I'm sitting at the University of Utah campus, and in between classes, I would be walking out, outside the campus, and there's buildings, and they would have these little booths set up right there on the side of the road, and they're like, I want a free t-shirt or get this free thing for applying for a credit card. And so I would go there and I would apply for a credit card, and I had no idea what I was doing, but it actually worked out in my favor. I never actually used these credit cards. And I started to build some credit history starting at age 18. And by the time I was 21, 22, needing to get car loans, I at least had some credit established. I had like a $3,000 credit card limit on a credit card that I had never, ever used. And so that was actually my first foray into credit. I don't remember my parents teaching me anything about credit. They certainly advised me to avoid debt and pay cash for as many things as possible because you can get into trouble. And I do remember there were a lot of my classmates that actually did rack up credit card debts with these credit cards that they got, going out and partying and having a good time. And all of a sudden, the payment started to come due, and I can't make the payment. And those were the people that years later would reach out to me for a home loan, and they wouldn't qualify. And I'm like, we gotta make these payments on time, guys. And so that was kind of my first experience where credit came in. And like you said, it did have an impact because people look to buy homes. It's still part of the American dream to a certain extent, I think, to buy a home. And if your credit's not where it needs to be, you're not buying that home.
Absolutely. Or if it's even just a little bit lower, like when we're looking at a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 home, the difference between a 5% interest rate and a 6% interest rate, not just with your monthly payment, but how much you actually pay over the life of that loan, is sickening. Like it's astronomical. And a lot of the times that extra rate or 2 or 3% is simply due to bad credit. It's wild.
And so you literally might spend or pay an extra, several $10,000, maybe as much as an extra $100,000 over the life of that loan because of the high interest rate you're paying. And so legitimately, that's why it's more difficult to create wealth and become financially independent in this country if you don't pay attention to credit. You're going to be paying higher interest rates on mortgages, which means more money is going towards interest. You're not paying it down. You're going to qualify for less of a home, which means it's going to probably appreciate less in value. So everything is working against you, and the sooner you can get educated, and that's a lot of what it is. It's whatever we focus on, we learn about, we become better at. And so the next thing here is we've talked about homes, like that's a big deal. You can't buy a home. And I think it's interesting, you look at credit repair companies out there, and they don't actually go out and say, hey, we're a credit repair company. What they will do is they'll advertise for, you want to buy that home when your credit is, that obstacle not letting you get to buy that home. So, let us help you so you can qualify for your home. And so smart advertisers with credit repair companies will kind of focus on that. But a big deal in being able to buy a home. It is the American dream. It is for most families one of the biggest ways that they can create wealth, generational wealth, by being able to build up equity in that home. And if you can't qualify for that home, you're in trouble. And I think home ownership in this country has gone down in the last 2 to 3 years. I think it was up to 65, 66%. I think it's come down to maybe 63, 62%. And so it seems like home ownership is going down. It also seems like a lot of the younger generation are really struggling to get in that position where they can buy a home, and credit probably paying a part.
What I'm seeing with the young generation, being that we look at credit reports all day, every day, it's not even a ton of bad credit, but almost as bad credit is, a lack of credit history.
Exactly.
Right? You still have to have credit to be able to go out and get those good rates, to get the high limit credit cards, to get the Amex Delta Reserve where you can get the most Sky Miles, right? You have to have that credit history. And I think the younger generation is almost just scared of credit. Like there's been such this negative attitude towards credit, and credit is bad, and credit is bad, and credit is bad. And so this younger generation has that implanted in their heads, and so they're just scared of credit.
It's interesting. What happened in the early 2000s, and then 2008, 2009 hit, and so a lot of the parents of some of this younger generation of kids went through a painful reckoning where they had tried to invest in real estate or whatever, and they lost jobs. There was really a lot of job loss in that 08, 09 recession, and so people were unable to pay their bills. Their credit took a hit. And so some of them filed for bankruptcy, and a lot of them came back and never established credit. And so psychologically, unconsciously, a lot of these kids went through that, watching their parents struggle. They didn't get educated, but what they did remember was, oh, debt bad, avoid debt at all costs, don't have any credit. And then they get up into those years where they want to be able to buy their first home, or they even, just need, different loans for different reasons. And now you're right. It's not necessarily that they have bad credit. It's that they have no credit. And what happens when you have no credit?
You can't get credit.
Shocking.
You're in this exact same position. And it's kind of, we talked about this on our last episode when I say you inherit your parents' poor credit.
We saw lot of comments on that. There was like 66 comments on
Some people took that literally. Like they thought that I meant like, because my parents had these negative items, you're inheriting that when they die. That's not what I meant. Okay. What we were talking about, like you just said, Leo, is like 08, 09. I see this with a lot of friends that I have where they saw their parents get into huge trouble. They were so over leveraged, and it created this fear of debt and this fear of credit. And guess what? You don't inherit their credit, right? You don't inherit those negative items.
It's the psychological
Exactly.
effects.
You do absolutely, in a lot of cases, inherit your parents' skills. You inherit your parents' fears. You inherit their habits. And so poor money decisions or fears of credit, or your parents constantly saying, oh, credit cards got me in trouble, avoid them at all costs. Yes, that is going to be implanted on you, and that will become your mindset. Now there's outliers, of course, but that's what we were talking about, and that's what we see day in and day out.
That's exactly right. Recent surveys show that the majority of kids in this nation who grow up and are in their teens, their 20s, and even their young 30s, the majority of their education about money, about credit, came from their parents, came from their grandparents. And so if those parents, grandparents were not successful financially, if they hadn't understood and learned the money game, if they have no idea how the credit game works, then they're going to be much more likely to fail when it comes to money, when it comes to credit, when it comes to investments, when it comes to good debt versus bad debt, because of that example. Sometimes it's example, sometimes it's what they say, it's what they hear unconsciously. And so that's why it's so crazy that these things are not taught in school. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. Why is credit money not really taught in school? What are some of the specifics that should be taught in school? And well, if they're not going to be, then we're going to darn do our best right now to teach you so that you can educate your family, children, company, etc., so that credit and money is something that they are well positioned on, understand, and can succeed with. So we've talked about, insurance. We've talked about how credit affects home ownership. Let's talk about the car loan industry. And we talked a little bit about the craziness in auto loan, financing, where so many auto loan brokers will just damage your credit, hitting so many different inquiries. But let's talk about the difference between what you're going to pay if you have good credit for a car loan and what you'll pay if you had bad credit. And you actually have a lot of experience kind of with this, because your family has a lot of history in helping people with poor credit to actually be able to get auto loans and buy cars.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. My grandfather started one of the very first buy here, pay here car dealerships in Utah, which ultimately when he was 20, 25 years old, he was working for dealerships, and he said, you know what? I'm going to create a solution that finances absolutely anybody. I'm going to have to hire bounty hunters. I'm going to have to write off a lot of debt and lost vehicles and whatnot, but it will all balance out. And so ultimately, that being said, yes, he is one of those dealers that charges an astronomical rate for a car because someone has poor credit and is ultimately saying, there is a very, very good chance I don't pay this bill. Okay, we'll give you a vehicle, but you're going to pay twice as much as someone that shows that they can consistently pay their bills. And that's not an exaggeration, Leo. We're talking if I went out to get a truck right now and my auto loan was $400 a month, someone with a 605 credit score could go get that same vehicle and be paying $800 to $1,000 a month.
100%. That's what's so unique, I think, about the auto loan industry is you've got that collateral, and they understand their business, and they understand how people make payment. And so interestingly enough, almost anybody can qualify for an automobile loan as long as they have some sort of verifiable income. Yep. and they can breathe and they have some sort of credit score. It could all be, in the high 500s. It could be in the low 600s, but you can legitimately qualify for that auto loan. But you're exactly right. Instead of paying $400 for that, F-150 that's 10 years old, you're actually paying $800 a month because you don't understand credit, you have bad credit history, and they would love to give you that auto loan, and they know their numbers that a certain amount of people are going to default. That's why you're being charged a higher interest rate, and they're going to do their best not to lose money because they're in the business to make money and take care of their family too. And so that's what you have to understand. Like, anybody can qualify for an auto loan with verifiable income and really bad credit, but what you're going to be paying out in interest and that monthly payment is going to be substantially higher and cost you significantly and kind of keep you, locked in to not a great vehicle, but very high car payments until you begin to understand your credit.
Absolutely. And a vehicle is something that you can absolutely refinance. People don't realize that. They think you're locked into that auto loan forever. In fact, it's a really good idea to refinance if you're at a high rate and you improve your credit or you get more credit history. It's not like a home loan where they're going to have to add another $8,000 to $10,000 onto your loan if you refi. You can go right into your bank. Hey, I'm currently at a 14.99 because I had bad credit when I got this auto loan. Can you pre-qualify me? Let's see what I qualify for today. Well, guess what? They take you down to a 6.5. You refinance that auto loan. Your payment went down quite a bit, and now it didn't cost you anything because it's an auto loan. So it's a great move to make. If you currently have a high interest auto loan, go into your local credit union and see what they can pre-qualify you for.
No, exactly right. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand is, let's say you get that mortgage, you get that car loan, and you're paying a much higher rate because of poor credit history, and you start to learn some of these credit secrets that we're going to be sharing with you today. You implement these, and now you actually boost your credit score. Well, yes, you should absolutely go ahead and refinance into a lower interest rate on your mortgage, a lower interest rate on your car. You should be able to apply for new credit cards if you have any credit card balances and move those to lower interest. These are smart money tactics that a lot of people don't do, and you'll see somebody who took a really bad mortgage, a really bad car loan, their credit's gotten better, and they're still in the same loan they've been in for years, paying that terrible interest rate, not knowing that they should refinance into a much lower interest rate and better loan.
Absolutely.
Okay, guys, we've gone over insurance. We've gone over home, cars. Let's talk a little bit about school loans. Like, this is a deal, right? If you're trying to go to law school or medical school or engineering school, and you're going to definitely need that student loan to be able to pay for that, and you need to be able to qualify for it. And if you can't qualify for it with your credit, then you're going to have to go and find a cosigner. So legitimately, if you're trying to get into higher education and get a student loan, and there's a lot can be said about whether that's the best investment or not, you've got to definitely look at the pros and cons to weigh with that. But student loans are going to be factored in, and there's a lot of people paying exorbitant interest rates on their student loans because of their credit score.
Yeah, and again, that is something that we see quite frequently. And we also not just see that with the students. I see that on the parents' credit reports.
Oh my goodness,
a lot,
yes we do.
Because their kids started school and decided, you know what, this isn't for me. I'm not going to finish, and I don't care about my credit, so I'm just going to default on all of this. And guess what? Now it's ruining the parents' credit score. So my first thought on that is you better have a very, very stern and firm sit down with your child. If you're about to co-sign on a student loan, number one, they better be fully committed to actually finish and complete that. And number two, they better understand how that impacts not just their credit, but your credit as well. Because like all these things we just talked about, just because your kid defaulted on a student loan, your credit could go down by 100 points, and now you're paying the higher rates. You're having a hard time getting insurance. You're paying for twice as much as you should for a vehicle. All because your kid didn't complete school or didn't care about their credit.
And this is exactly why a lot of millennials, a lot of Generation Z out there are out there struggling financially because they didn't master their credit. And so they're paying more on student loans, and they might have average of $40,000 in student loans that they owe. They can't quite qualify for a home. They haven't been able to get better jobs. They haven't learned how to start their own businesses. And so times are tough, and that's why home ownership is down for them. That's why they're waiting a lot longer to get married. That's why they're not having kids, because of this lack of credit and financial education. And that's why it's so important that our youth are getting this credit education. At the end of this podcast, we're actually going to be giving out our Credit College Secrets, a way to access that through our MyFigures account there. And that is something that's important for us. It's a mission, because No one teaches us about credit in school and college, and so it's on us to be able to share that information with you and with our families, and we want you to share it with others too, because this is information that's vital to your wealth and your future and well-being. So we've talked about how it affects them, trying to get that higher education degree where they need student loan financing. What about those who want to start a business? How important is credit, Ty, when it comes to trying to start a brand new business and really live the American dream? Home ownership is certainly part of it, but I think even more in today's world of Instagram, millionaires and billionaires and all the entrepreneurs that have now become our heroes, the Elon Musks of the world, and those who are really taking life to the next level in entrepreneurship. They understand that to get started, it generally takes some money to get that business off of the ground. That's what we're focused on at Seven Figures Funding. But what kind of role is credit playing if you want to start a brand new business in the United States in 2023?
If you want to start a business in the United States in 2023, your personal credit is imperative. No ifs, ands, or buts about that, Leo. There's no such thing as a startup business loan that isn't going to look at your personal credit. Unless you're going out and getting a venture capitalist to invest a lot of money, or you're getting your mom or your dad or a family member, those are the outliers. But any sort of business loan, they're going to want business financials. They're going to want to check your personal credit. If you're a startup, you don't have business financials, guess what? You're tied to what personal options are out there, and every single personal option, whether it's credit cards, home equity line of credit, a personal loan, whatever that may be, your personal credit is a massive, massive indicator in whether or not you're going to get that loan.
And one of the big bits of information out there that is just not true is this idea that I can just buy an existing entity that might have good business credit, and that's going to translate into $100,000 in a business line of credit. That's not true. Maybe that happened 20 years ago. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've never seen it happen. It is not something that happens in 2023. Your personal credit is going to be vital, and until you have a $50 to $100 million a year business with really well-established business credit and some tangible assets that a bank could actually use as collateral, personal credit is what it's going to take to be able to qualify for a business loan. And now we get to the most exciting part of why credit matters in 2023, and that is the dating world, right? You've got all the different apps out there. You got eHarmony and Match This and I want to marry a cowboy.com. I don't know. There's all these different apps out there. Of course,
Farmers
Tinder,
Only.
Farmers Only. There's a new Bachelor show about marry a farmer that's super exciting for a lot of our farmers out there. Who are sometimes great entrepreneurs, by the way. But when you're dating, you and I have been married for a while, but we've got a lot of folks here in the office, Jillian right there. How important is that credit score for your prospective partner? You're super excited about them, and you realize they didn't list their credit score on the little dating app there, and now all of a sudden you ask them and you realize, oh, that's why you didn't list it.
This one might sound shallow. This might sound shallow, Leo, but when I was dating, if I was sitting down at dinner with a girl and I found out that she didn't care about her credit whatsoever, she had a low 500 score, she never paid her bills, finances weren't important to her, it was a massive, massive turnoff. Because in my opinion, that's going to carry on into the marriage. And I am very, very strict about my credit and my finances, and I just didn't want anything to do with that. So for me, credit and financial health and financial wellness were two very, very important things.
100%. And if you're out there in the dating world and you're looking for that future spouse or partner, and one of the first things you're going to learn about them is if you want to have a successful family, one of the top reasons why many marriages fail in this country is obviously due to finances and lack of understanding of credit and getting into trouble with credit. And so when that happens, that's why it's an important factor for you to decide who you're going to marry and be with long term. And so if you aren't actually understanding credit, and if they have no desire to get their money right, to get their credit right, then the marriage is going to be tough, because oftentimes you'll have two partners, maybe opposites attract, maybe one's a little bit more frugal and the other one spends a lot more. But if you aren't on the same page with your finances and understanding credit and taking care of it, then you're going to struggle. You won't be able to invest as much. You'll be spending a lot more on interest over years, and it's going to cost you big time. And so it's super important that couples get on the same page if you're going to be in a long-term relationship. And that's why that credit score is a factor. And people are now listing it more and more. Hey, I've got good credit, or hey, I don't have good credit, but I'm understanding how important it is. I'm going to make the commitment to learn about it. But yeah, if you just have no desire and you think it's not important, and oh, all these rich people, they only care about money, well, guess what? You're not going to be one of them if that's your attitude.
Absolutely. I mean, what if you're trying to go buy your first house and you have a perfect credit score, but your spouse has a 550 and all of a sudden you're stuck because of that? So, not saying, I mean, sometimes things do happen. And if you have the perfect match out there and they have a 550 because of an old student loan that went into collections, yeah, there's some workarounds there and whatnot. But overall, if it's someone that just doesn't care, they don't pay their bills, they don't work hard, then yeah, that's something that would turn me away and should turn a lot of people away, because your life is going to be very, very tricky, especially early on. As you start to get the cars, you get the homes, you get the insurance, it's going to be really hard to ever get ahead because you're paying so much more than someone with healthy credit.
100%. So if you're looking to attract your dream spouse partner, romantic partner, credit is going to play an important factor in that decision. So make sure that you're on top of your credit, you're understanding, the factors that come into creating a credit score, et cetera, et cetera.